This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST Robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
Okay, recording has started. There you go. The floor is yours, Jason.
All right, thanks, Scott. So looking at everyone on the call, I think everyone for the most part is familiar with Minnetrials, or their team is involved, or they've read the manual to some degree at this point. All right, so just for anyone who's watching later, right, so Minnetrials is essentially an off-season training game developed to give teams an opportunity to run through an entire FRC cycle with new students, right? So from game unveiling and reading the manual and starting to come up with strategies, and then all the way through brainstorming, developing ideas, starting to build and implement, and then troubleshooting, and then get some competition experience, right? And so the goal for this is very much focused on training and new members. So I know, as we've talked in the past on some of these calls and other formats, a lot of teams use this where only their rookies are on the team, and their veterans, their returning members, are more taking on the role of mentor. Some teams use it where everyone's involved, or only members who have been on the team for 2 years or more act as mentors. So it's there are different formats that teams use, but primarily, right, the focus is on learning and development for newer members. And I think the biggest rule difference that highlights this compared to a regular off-season event is that the drive teams need to rotate and change every match. And so nobody is a driver more than one match until everyone on the team has had a chance to drive, or be the co-driver, or be the human player, or have some role on the drive team, right? So I figured this year, with these calls going on, we'd try doing a live Q&A, which is maybe a dangerous proposition for me, to commit to answering questions live and hold ourselves to them. So we'll see. I may there may be one or two that I decided we're going to sit on, and we'll come back and answer. We've already had a few questions emailed in the previous few weeks, and there's some answers out there. And those who have looked at the manual lately have seen that on day one after they were released, we already made some corrections. And 1 week in, we made a somewhat substantial rule change that was missed, that was intended from the get-go, and that was communicated also in the email. But so I guess I'm going to open up the floor if people have questions and they want to put them in the chat or ask them out loud, and we'll work through them. Like normal FRC Q&A, right? I'm not going to rule on all hypothetical situations, right? And for those of you who've read the Q&A for FRC, know the GDC, the Game Design Committee, likes to call out when it's a hypothetical situation and leave it up to the referees to judge that in the moment based on current circumstances. So cool. And Ian's already got one. I guess I didn't really write in any rules about putting trained monkeys on the robot, but if you look through the robot construction rules, they basically steal from FRC construction rules, which would ban that. So trained monkeys are out, Ian.
I guess it was banned in FRC Q&A last year, yeah. Which is a shame. I mean, I think I could probably source a trained monkey for under $1,000. I don't know.
If you get an emperor penguin, we can talk, but
I feel like those would be a bit more pricey, though, you know?
Yeah.
Jason, maybe it would make sense to sort of start this off by the rule changes or the clarifications that you've already done since the manual was released. That might be a great way to start.
Yeah. So there is a change log on page 2 of the manual, and let's see here. I'm going to share my screen. So there's a change log here. So we've got some rule changes. There's a few people who commented very quickly that we had some mismatched numbers in terms of how many cobs, corn cobs or spoiled cobs, were staged in different locations. So the first 2 corrections are just getting those in line to have the values match up. The third one is where we talk about introducing spoiled cobs, and the simplified version is that the intention is when you come to get cobs from the grain elevator, right, at that higher height, you're going to be feeding a spoiled cob in with every 2 corn cobs, right? So robots can hold 3 cobs, and you come up, you're going to get 2 corn cobs and 1 spoiled cob, right, to try and balance that, being able to get them at a higher height and then deliver them a little more easily versus trying to collect them off the ground. So I'm sure we didn't write a foolproof, bulletproof rule here, but we took a first stab at how to word that to make it, to allow teams different ways of handling that situation and not be too restrictive while also not leaving any loopholes. And that's really the changes that have been made.
Jason, my screen is not big enough to read that. Is there a requirement that the spoiled cob must enter the robot?
It must be at least momentarily fully possessed. So that phrasing essentially is intended to say, yes, it must enter the robot. Right, and be controlled by the robot, and then the robot can reject it if it so chooses.
And I know that a question came up. So for those of you who haven't been on the call before, 2 weeks ago, we did a Minnetrials kickoff call on the Sunday night call. And a question that came up then was if the cobs enter on the top of the ramp or in the middle. I assembled one of these this weekend and realized, oh, the middle's only 3.5 inches tall. So there's no way a 5-inch cob could go in there.
Yeah, that was also one of the questions sent in. Yeah, and yeah, so all the cobs will come out over this top surface here. They won't fit inside. This is a duplicate of what has been used in an FRC game in the past and was used for last year's Minnetrials. So we wanted to keep it the same in case anyone still has one laying around. Minimize the resource usage. Other questions?
So is momentarily, like, is there a time defined by momentarily? So, like, for example, if you had a chute on the side of the robot that the human player enters it in and it just automatically falls through the chute and gets redirected on the ground, would that be not considered long enough to be momentarily? Or would you not, like, have full possession of it and then almost have to actuate something to reject it?
Yeah, so what some people might not know is that in FRC game manuals, all terms that are in all caps have definitions. So if you go to section 12 in the back at the glossary, it defines those terms. And so there's momentary is probably the most discussed term from teams, but there is a definition. And momentary describes rule violations that happen for fewer than approximately 3 seconds. And so, yeah, in this case, Ian, momentarily is being taken as something that happens for fewer than approximately 3 seconds.
So that means it would be any amount of time spent controlled by the robot is what that momentarily means then by that definition?
Robots are expected to more than momentarily fully possess the spoiled.
Okay, more than momentarily. I missed that in the rules.
So you have to have it for at least 2 seconds.
More or less, yeah.
Is there a requirement that the cobs be fed into the robot in a particular order? So if you let's say that you come up to the loading station the first time and you put in 2 good cobs and a spoiled cob, but you dropped one of the good cobs, and so you came back and got a second good cob. So now you've got 3 in your robot. You drive across the field. When you come back, can you start with 2 good ones, or does it have to go good, bad, good? Since I mean, is there an order that the human has to feed them in, or as long as there's 3 and it's a 2-in-1 situation, it doesn't matter what order they go in the robot?
The intention right now is that it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right. And so whether you want to feed the spoiled cob first and then 2 corn cobs, or 2 corn cobs and a spoiled cob, or one then the other, right? Whatever makes sense. Right. This is going to be one of those rules that there's an intention and a spirit to it, and to some degree, it's a judgment call on whether you're playing along with it. Because I don't know that we're going to be able to write a bulletproof rule.
And given the fact that you have to hold that spoiled cob for at least 3 seconds, I think it's sort of irrelevant, because the intent here is that you're trying to avoid having someone just dump in a spoiled cob and it bounces off the robot and falls out. If you have to possess it for at least 3 seconds, then I guess the order doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and then I guess another clarifying question with that is I would assume that if there's only 2 good cobs in the grain elevator, that you can't just send them, that you need that 3rd cob. Is that right? That's spoiled?
Yeah. So the intention, right, is, yeah, you have to introduce it. So that way you can't just take 2 corn cobs from the grain elevator and then go pick up a 3rd one in transit, a 3rd corn cob in transit, and then have 3 and place them in, right? So the intention is either you're picking them up off the ground and you're getting 3 good ones, or maybe a spoiled one that was picked up inadvertently, or you're getting 2 corn cobs and 1 spoiled cob from the grain elevator. So.
And is the requirement to put a spoiled cob in the robot still in place? Let's say if there's no more spoiled cobs in the grain elevator, would you then have to push more spoiled cobs into the grain elevator before you can continue using it?
We're not anticipating that will be a situation that comes up, that we would be recycling. So when cobs are stored in the silo, right, the silos will be emptied periodically as needed, and so the spoiled cobs would be reintroduced to the grain elevator to give human players sufficient, right?
Okay, and so then that also implies that human players wouldn't be able to just dump all of their spoiled cobs on the floor at the beginning of the match through the chute and be like, oops, we have no spoiled cobs left.
Yes, that's an interesting question. Thank you. Thanks, Ian. I'll write that one in.
You may have to have your referees get a snow rake out and scoop up all the spoiled cobs back in, so you have some.
All right, other questions, comments, concerns?
Is there driving across this field, especially at the start when there's so much corn on the field, is there any concern of bulldozing or plowing, which is usually in FRC rules that you're not allowed to plow game pieces? That might be kind of tricky for this game?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's going to be a little bit of referee discretion, but if you really read into the rules on FRC games, the rules on control do vary a little bit year to year on hurting pieces. In this scenario, if you read in, I think the way that we've written control, it doesn't actually consist as control if you're hurting the pieces and they're not in your robot. So I think incidental hurting is going to be completely fine, and you're not going to see fouls called. If intentional hurting of more than 3 game pieces, we'll probably start to see more scrutiny from the referees.
One of our students asked this question, which was a very smart question. I gave them the answer that I am confident is correct, but I want to verify here that your 36 by 36 by 54 box is at all times, right? You can't extend beyond that during the match.
Correct. Yeah. So we got that same question in the Q&A earlier. So if you see question 3 here, rule R1 and rule R2 have overlapping rules, and so we left them in. Where is it? It's here. Yeah, we left it written this way to try and minimize changes year over year for ourselves, right? And keep things as similar as possible. So yeah, they essentially say the same thing.
And that includes bumpers if you elect to put bumpers on your robot.
Yes. So the 36 by 36 by 54 is your entire robot has to fit in that box at all times. So for those who have done FTC, right, you've seen the polycarbonate or plexiglass 8-inch cube that they put over the robot to check it for starting configuration. Just as imagine a box 36 by 36 by 54. Your robot always needs to fit within that box. Right? You can move around within that box, right? So if you have an appendage that comes off one side and then stows back in, and you have an appendage that goes off the other side, and it always stays within that 36 by 36 by 54 inch box, that's fine. It doesn't always have to be the same relative to your frame or relative to your wheels. Right? So we've seen this in years past where teams had maybe a starting configuration and then they pulled a part of their robot in, and then they had a different intake that extended after that. Let's see. Am I missing questions? All right. So someone asked in the chat, what is the point penalty for violating 3.4 of spoiled cob introduction? And let me quick read to see if we left a specific penalty. So I don't think we specifically wrote it in, but improper removal or return of game pieces in and out of the field, from my viewpoint, would cover that. So 5-point penalty.
And I have another question here, which is a bit of a different sort of like area of the field. But for the central field at the start of the match, the sort of placement of game pieces, Because it has a sort of like arrow pattern with the spoiled ones.
Mhm.
Is that a defined? Is it always going to be that same pattern? Because I know in last year's FRC game, the pattern could be switched up for certain game pieces.
Yes, so it'll always have that same pattern. Let's go up here. That one doesn't show up well. Here, yeah, so this will be the starting configuration of spoiled and cobs and corn cobs, always, every single time. Yeah, so we're not going to do a shifting pattern. You can program your autonomous assuming those locations and not have to worry about changes. You do have to handle the fact that the field is not, it's mirrored whether you're red versus blue, right? So blue tractors or robots are going to come out and go to the left to go to their silo. Red robots are going to come out and go to the right to go to their silo. So you'll have to have multiple autonomous routines to cover which side of the field you're starting on.
Jason, if corn is attempted to be scored in the silo and it misses and falls out of the field, will that be reintroduced right over the wall, or is that going to go all the way back around to the grain elevator?
That is something we haven't discussed. And right, so let's say it's very normal if you knock a piece out of the field on an FRC game that it gets introduced right where it's closest to reintroduce it or where it fell out. However, generally when items that fall out when where they're getting scored, just because of the shape the FRC fields usually make, or how much coverage they have as far as walls or barriers or netting, they tend to come back in somewhere else or get given to the other alliance's human players. So I could see it both ways. There is a specific reintroduction zone for pieces that we called the back 40. So when the silos fill up, those pieces come around and are given to the back 40 rather than the other alliance's grain elevator. So I think right now, the way it's written in, they would go back into the back 40, regardless where they went out, Scott. But I think we'll take that one to discuss and decide if we want to change that.
I have a question about the back 40, actually. So when there's game pieces in the back 40, can either human player from either team take those at any time, or only when they're filling a robot?
At any time. So the back 40 is just a spot on the field, right? There's no physical structure there. It's just a spot on the carpet, right? So
Okay.
They'll just get dumped there. There's no alliance specific coloring to that. That's just a dumping spot for additional corn cobs and spoiled cobs to go back in. So yeah, anyone can grab from there. There's no specific rules or protected zone.
I guess I did not read the rules closely enough. So is there, if the grain elevators run out of corn, is that it for the grain elevators? Since anything that gets scored gets dropped on the carpet on the field, that means that once the grain elevators are empty, they're empty?
Correct.
Okay.
But pieces can still be reintroduced into the grain elevators, though, from the Garden of Pain, I think.
Yes, robots can push game pieces out of the field through the grain elevator, and then the human players can reintroduce them at the higher height. But they're not refilled by field staff or scoring of game pieces by the other lines or anything like that.
And I guess question with that, and I know that there's sort of like a backlog of questions that need to be answered in here, so I'm sorry about that. But
There you go.
yeah. So with the grain elevators, is there a maximum to how many they can hold, or in theory, could robots push most of the ground game pieces into a grain elevator?
There is not a maximum. I will warn you that there is a penalty or a rule against blocking off access to areas of the field, and depending on how that's written, I need to remember how that one's written. Yeah, so right, G21, two robots that appear to be to a referee to be working together may not isolate or close off any major component of match play. So I would say if you remove all the game pieces from the field, you have probably isolated or closed off a major component of match play from your opponent alliance. Other questions?
Is there anything done if game pieces get stuck in the silo?
Yeah, so if game pieces are stuck in the silo, when it's safe to do so, field staff would clear that jam and remove them. So I could imagine that game pieces could get stuck if several are dumped at once. If you look in the CAD model, there's a somewhat of an internal structure, right, to allow them to flow down and through. So we're hoping that there won't really be any jams, but we haven't tried this yet, right? So if there is a jam or if game pieces get stuck, we would try to remove them as it's safe to do so.
I will say that with the one that I built and assembled, and I feel like I got the angle correct on the chute on the bottom of the silo. If we dump 3 in there immediately at once, it does often get jammed, but I feel like that's unlikely to happen, that all 3 balls or corn cobs would go in at the same time. But on that same vein, what if you have a corn cob where one of the balls gets hung up between the backboard, I guess, and the side of the tube? If it gets hung up on the top, are you planning on kind of kicking those in like you did last year with the rings getting hung up on the pillars?
Yeah, so if it gets hung up, sorry, I'm not.
I can see how it might get hung up in that corner right there between the backboard and the top of the ring.
Yeah,
like, it's possible.
Yeah, I think if they're majority of the way in, right, we're just going to push them in and count them.
Yeah.
I mean, try not to design your robot to rely on that, but yeah, things that are majority of the way. As many of you can imagine, we have not spent as much time designing and testing these field elements as First normally does. So we give ourselves a little margin of error to just correct by human intervention.
Jason, are the official silos cardboard sonotubes?
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, same stuff that I don't remember if we actually called out a link But yeah, the intention is that these official ones are going to be that concrete form that you can pick up at Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards and cut to size.
Do you? So, that's what I did when I built the one that our team used for practicing. I'm concerned about the durability of that tube. I don't know if you have plans on reinforcing it in any way to take contact with the robot. I ended up putting some vertical 2x4s in the bottom, at least, where a robot's most likely to run into it. But my top is likely going to get crushed as we do our testing, I think.
Yeah. There's some 2x4s already in there.
Yeah.
It may undergo a change. We'll probably also build some spares. It only needs to survive one day.
Right.
So,
I mean, you could cut a plywood ring or something around the top, but then they for sure would get jammed up to try to try to give it more strength. But as long as you have some spares, I think we'll probably be able to repair them as the day goes on.
Is the backboard also cardboard?
yeah, the backboard, the intention right now is that it's going to be the same material, that same thick cardboard that the tubes are made out of. But we'll see once we start making these. Darren usually has some ideas and tweaks it as we start building our game elements to make them more durable. All right, other questions? Comments, concerns?
What is kind of the extent that the scarecrow can be like extended through its decoration, I guess?
Yeah, so we're gonna decorate it and have a little fun with it, is the moral of that story. We'll keep it inside the space, this rectangular base. So just it's gonna stay short enough that everyone can see past it. It's probably gonna get decorated with a shirt or something painted to make it start to look like a scarecrow and give it a little bit of a match the theme. But assume that it stays within that rectangular base that's there, which is 24 inches by 24 inches. Other questions, comments, concerns? Large loopholes that we missed that people want to alert us to?
Jason, on the rule for the drive team, and I understand the goal is to get everyone to drive the robot, human primary, secondary driver. Are we counting the human player roles as part of the drive team, or does everyone really have to drive?
Yeah, so we count human player, the 2 drivers and one of the drive coaches as on the drive team. So cycle everyone through those 4 roles, right? Because not everyone wants to drive,
Right.
right?
Okay.
But everyone should get a little experience to understand what the drive team does and goes through. And then there's a second drive coach role in addition to normal, right? And that role can be filled by an adult or an experienced student or someone. And that role can stay. There's the same person can continue to fill that role throughout to help organize your drive team and lead them through what the process is. So, yeah, transitions get a little more hectic than normal FRC events because essentially you have a new drive team every single match, figuring out how to lift the robot onto the field, set up, get the computer running and whatnot, right? We're also much more lenient on how many people are there for setup because, right, your drive team might not have students who understand or are experienced with how to set up for the beginning of a match and get the laptop driver station squared away and ready to go. So, if you bring 2 more people to the driver station to get the driver station set up and ready to go, and then they leave before the match, totally fine. Right.
Yeah, and I guess follow-up question with that. So I'm assuming technician for this can also stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then another question, because for No Mythic, we're having only our new, or at least on our build up team, we're having only our new students working on this. And so I'm assuming and I don't know what our plans are, but if, say, we bring our whole team, we'd be able to only have the people that worked with the robot drive, and we wouldn't have to have every member of the team drive. Is that right?
Yeah, this is self-enforced for the most part, right? So, as long as we don't see the same drive team every single match, this is self-enforced, and right, people understand why this rule is there, right? To give you a way to get all your new members some experience, to get that understanding of how the drive team works and what the drive team's going through, and some amount of just empathy, right, when you get to competition for the drive team and the pressure involved. So we're not going to be policing and writing down who was on your drive team. That's on you all to decide who constitutes your Minnetrials team and who should cycle through your drive team. Trying to think what else, other questions we've had. I called this out 2 weeks ago, but just as a reminder, First has decided to change the April tag family from last year. So it was, for those who followed really closely, it was initially 36H11 family, and then it switched to 16H5 family, and then now we're back to 36H11. So if you're planning on using April tags, right, just note that it's different than the 2023 season. And you can find those in the link and find the appropriate April tags.
I admit that I have not been very involved in the April tag stuff with my team. Does anyone know if the WPI Raspberry Pi image lets you choose your April tag family? Or do we have to go find the old image of the Raspberry Pi software?
Are you referring to Photon Vision?
I believe, is that the one that First recommends?
I'm not sure if
So
First recommends it, but it's the one a lot of teams use.
Yeah, so I believe you specified, Scott, with your Limelight or Photon Vision or whatever vision processing system you use.
All right. I'm guessing Photon Vision is the thing. I like I said, I've not been involved with that effort.
And I know for us, ours, we were not using either a Limelight or Photon Vision. We were using something else, and then we just uploaded all of the tags, images of all the tags, into a directory on our device. So we didn't specify. We just uploaded and replaced the folder, and then it handled it. So. All right. Other, loopholes, concerns about balance and gameplay that people have? I know I was not at MRI, but Robettes kindly handed out game pieces to, I believe, most of the teams. I was at home sick. So I believe, at least the people I see on the call, most everyone is that I know their team should have game pieces by now. If not, send me an email, and we'll work out getting you game pieces.
If there aren't any questions and teams want to sort of shift into a discussion of what they're thinking for robots, more strategy talk, maybe more questions will come out of that. Jason, do you have any thoughts on, expanding the topic here?
Yeah, I think that's a good
idea. So I know that a lot of you haven't even started your process yet on Minnetrials. Nightcrawler did do design this past week, or strategy design type of thing. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments they want to share in terms of what they're thinking right now or what they're already exploring?
I guess I can start for Nomothic, because we're only meeting once a week, so we're kind of slow, but we started back at the start of October. And in our kickoff, we sort of saw two main robot strategies, that being the ground pickup and the grain elevator. And from there, we chose the ground pickup. It was pretty even, but we decided that it had a more strategic advantage because the game pieces are closer on the field to the silos, plus autos would probably be easier. And so over the past few weeks now, we started prototyping some systems for a ground pickup that'll lift up to the silo.
Who's on here for Nightcrawler? I would rather not do the talking if we have students. Oh, Gio's on here. Ken's on here. Gio or Ken, are you interested in sharing kind of what Nightcrawler has done so far?
I guess I can speak about the team. So we split up into two smaller teams to give each person just a little more opportunity to have a greater impact on the design process. So on the half that I've been working with, we settled on a pair of designs that we're going to be looking to prototype this week. Both of them involved wheeled intakes. One of them is sort of a claw that, and the other one is essentially just it's wheeled intake. I don't know how to describe it. Sorry. And yeah.
And currently, I believe both of those designs on the team that Gio was working with is planning on using basically a vertical elevator to lift it from the ground to the scoring apparatus. Am I remembering that right, Gio?
Yep.
And I believe our other squad of students are also looking at ground pickup only as well. We had a pair of students, or a tuple, a threesome of students that were working on a hopper bot that would get it from the human player station and drive across the field, but it unfortunately did not get the votes. So as Rasmus said, strategically, the ground bot seems to be the more optimal one if you can actually pull it off and get it built in time. So that's the that's the way it looks like Nightcrawler is going to proceed.
And then question for y'all with that, because I know for No Mythic, we just barely started doing CAD, and I'm the design captain there, so my brain is very sort of CAD focused. But for Nightcrawler, have y'all done any sort of CAD for those, and do you plan to do a bunch of CAD for Minnetrials?
Gio, can you share sort of how many days we've been working on this and what we did each day? That might help. And then if you have any other things to share, that would be great about our process or plans.
So 2 Wednesdays ago was our kickoff day. When we went over the game manual and talked general strategy. Then last Monday we broke into our two squads, and from there we started either drawing or CADing general mock-ups of either intakes or elevator mechanisms. And on Wednesday we finished up those general mock-ups, and then groups decided on what they're planning to prototype. Looking forward, I think we are planning to try to make it. We're going to make it CAD models of each of our robots. I don't know. I suppose I don't know how detailed and if we're going to have full motion with everything. I don't know. I don't know if there's a plan yet for that. You're on mute, Scott.
I muted myself instead of unmuting. Our build captain has stated that final CAD models are due in a week, so we have this next week. I think that's pretty optimistic since mostly we're going to have new students do the CAD models. So I don't know. We might decide that we'll take our veteran students and have them maybe assist with the drawings in CAD or something, but the plan is to have a CAD for each robot. I anticipate the robots will start getting constructed before we have an actual 3D CAD model, but hopefully we'll have some sketches. And we've also given our students the option of, if you want to use grid paper and draw it to scale on grid paper, that's fine too. There was a point in time when Nightcrawler didn't do CAD and we used paper. And so we're okay with that. But as Gio said, we did kind of brainstorming in ideas last week and draw it on the whiteboard or on giant sheets of paper and to kind of sketch out concepts and ideas. And then this week is prototyping. So we'll be digging out the plywood, the 2x4s and trying to put some things together physically to get an idea of dimensions and how things would fit together. And then the hope is that next week we will start doing a real build of components or subsystems or whatever the students decide to do. Hopefully we'll start doing that next week. Jason shared how his team was doing it with they're handing them a working driving chassis. Our students will have an assembled chassis. Last year we made them put the kit parts chassis together out of the box. This year we're basically going to give them mostly assembled chassis that they can change the dimensions of, but it won't be wired or have any code, I don't think.
And as for draft chassis, Nemothic is somewhat similar there. We just sort of had it lying around in the back shop, so we're having them fix it up because we stole the motors from it, so they have to remake the gearboxes, wire it up, and then program it. So sort of similar there.
This is, I guess, both a bit of a training question and a Minnetrials question, because something we had an issue with last year on our day when we started brainstorming concepts is for a lot of new members, they didn't necessarily know, what the options were, in terms of, elevators, arms, flywheels, and, all of those different FRC mechanisms. And so I guess I was wondering if teams have a way to do that, introduce that without slowing down the rest of the team. Part of me is almost thinking there's like a 45-minute video that Spectrum makes that just goes over all of those, and part of me is, thinking if we could have people watch that on their own, but then that also no one's going to do that because people don't do
So
things.
Ian, what we did was I basically we had a day where it was like stations. So we had like a design station, and that was what I was running. I basically had that video in the background and used it as a slideshow and talked a lot faster through it just to go over the general mechanisms, giving them a few examples and stuff. But I think it kind of lets them know what is FRC possible. It definitely, you can put that out there and be like, hey, there's this 45-minute video if you want to watch, but it might be better to do a large team kind of presentation on that and possibly bring in like past robots into the conversation. So I had like one group of people go out to see our 2022 robot in our trophy case and kind of point out the mechanisms that was on that one.
And then I guess on the same token, do people do any introductions of strategic design during mini trials? That video is even longer than the Spectrum video. And I guess I think they've both been very valuable to me. And I'm not necessarily, I don't know if teams have a way where they present them in, quicker amounts.
I don't think Nightcrawler would do anything that you would refer to as strategic design in terms of how we've interacted with our students yet. We did. I share your kind of concern about, do students really know what's possible? And I feel like what we've seen happen at Nightcrawler so far, and we had a short conversation on Slack tonight with the captains, or I had a short conversation with some of the captains tonight of, it feels like it's last year's mini trials all over again, because they see that robot and that's their ideas naturally gravitate to how that robot elevated and lifted things, and it feels like a lot of our designs are following that because that's what they saw. We did introduce our students to previous year's robots and show what the mechanisms are like and how it works, but those robots didn't really have a very good parallel to what this game is, and so I'm not sure that was super helpful to them, because having zero experience, I'm not sure they could make the leap between, well, this mechanism that was on this robot here, if you adapted it this way, then it could work better for this particular game. I'm just not sure they can make those connections yet. So I'm not sure how helpful that was. I mean, I think it was important to do that, but in terms of helping with this design, I don't know how helpful that was. So we'll see. We struggle, and we've had Gio and I kind of walked away to the corner and had this conversation of how much should we like really try to encourage these students to move in a particular direction, and we've sided on the side of not more than we have, and so we've let some pretty solid ideas just kind of fall away because the students didn't advocate strongly enough for them, or they got voted down, or whatever the case may be. We did not step in and say, well, hold on, that's actually the best idea, you should do that one. So we let the students make those decisions, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, this is why we do this. So
yeah, I think for those who were there last year, you may have noticed that Hopkins teams, Technocrats teams were much more focused on autonomous or a simple delivery of those initial game pieces, right? And we did the same the year before. So I think we're seeing the same effect, Ian, right? That figuring out and thinking through, I start with game pieces and how do I score them is a lot simpler to conceptually get through than adding the complexity of I get more game pieces and then I get them through my robot to this location so that I can then score them. And I don't mind that we do that, because succeeding in autonomous at endgame is very important in FRC games. And so as we saw last year, right, there was one robot that had an autonomous at mini trials or test, right? And it worked every single time because they built a mechanism specifically for auto. and whatnot. And so, yeah, I don't know that we've figured out how to handle that problem either that you asked, Ian, but I think it's some amount of it is experience, right, on the part of mentors and veteran students to know you're coming up with some ideas and you've stalled out. When do I step in to help supply you with more ideas or help you connect your ideas or supply you with more information? Right.
One of the things that Nightcrawler does every year for regular kickoff, and we do it for Minnetrials as well, is we tape out the field on the floor, and we have the students act like they were robots, and then they play the game by walking around and play the game as humans to see what strategies work well and which ones don't. And so this year, what I observed our students doing is they tried a scenario where one robot feeds another robot. So they go get the corn cobs and they push it over to a robot that will score them. So they tried that strategy. They tried the strategy of ground pickup versus loading station. One of the things that we used to do with this human simulation was we used to give the students a spreadsheet, and we give them a half an hour, and they get so many points, and each component or each thing the robot could do would cost so many points, and they have to construct their robot. We started last year during the real kickoff, and we did it again for this Minnetrials, where we let the veterans on the team, the captains and design team, they designed archetypes, because often what happens is that when you let students design their own robot, you get very similar robots because they all seem to feel like there's certain designs that are the most common. And so instead we started building archetype robots. And if you think back to last year's real game, this game, so let's take it last year's Minnetrials game where you had the hoops and you had the balls. You had a robot that could only do hoops. You had a robot that could only do balls. You had a robot that could do both. You had a robot that could pick up multiple. And so you had lots of different variations. This year, the game is a lot simpler. And so we decided to have 4 archetypes, 2 that could do ground pickup and 2 that could do human player pickup. And each of those either scored on the same side they picked up or they scored behind them. And that made the robots a lot simpler because there was only 4 to choose from. And it actually was kind of nice because it caused them to play the game differently in their simulation, which was really neat to see that they tried different strategies.
One really good resource that we're using this year, especially during Minnetrials, is the Elevate Your Game presentation made by 1619 at Toro last year. I don't know if any of the rest of the teams here went to that. I'm going to put them in the chat. But we have heavily struggled at designing in general, and we went to this presentation last year. It was amazing. 10 out of 10 recommend it. But it just kind of goes through, it uses a lot of the same tactics that you guys have been talking about. So just kind of coming up with like goals for the season. So like if you just wanted to do an auto, then maybe just do an auto, and then simulating the game. But it also goes over like good designing things to do. So like don't make things in slots because it's not very secure. It's not going to be consistent. Just kind of like good prototyping things, and then good just general design. It's really great. We're trying to follow it best we can. So our next one is going to be start with doing our designs and then going through prototyping. So that's a really good resource that we are using this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that for us is we stress I know many teams do this and it's well known throughout, but the what versus how, right? And what will your robot do? And what parts of the game will it play? And what tasks will it complete? And then the following day or the later in the day or next week or whenever you do it, go through how is your robot going to do that? Is it going to have an elevator? Is it going to have a intake with rollers. It's right, and I think that once by constraining the what will our robot do, when we get to how, that does help with the idea generation because you are constrained, right? And so frequently having some constraints makes it much easier to come up with ideas. And that's been effective for us at helping jumpstart that a little bit. And then the mentors or the returning students feeding in additional ideas or information or builds on what the new members have had at appropriate times as they stall out or they're wrestling with how to deal with a certain part of the game has been effective, but by no means do I think we're perfect at it. So a question for all the teams, right? So like Scott mentioned that Nightcrawler has divided up their FRC team into 2 Minnetrials teams, and Hopkins is doing the same. Roughly how many students does everyone have on their Minnetrials team that's their focus, right? And that they're spending that much time on it, just for curiosity.
I can't really talk for Nomothic here, because we're doing pretty much only new students for building the robot, and then if you're returning for programming. And so we have a team of about 30 total students this year, but for main trials, we have about maybe 10 people working on it. So a pretty small team, and then just one team for Nomothic.
I think for Nightcrawler, we consider a Minnetrials person someone who's either first year on the team or was on the team last year, but maybe didn't have a major role in any aspect of the team because either they couldn't come to every meeting or maybe they joined later, whatever circumstances may be. And I think it's probably in the neighborhood of 10 per team, maybe 10 to 12. But as soon as we get through this kind of prototyping phase, our programmers are going to go back and do programming training. And so that will be, in terms of kids building the robot, that'll probably drop down to 5 to 6 per team building the robot.
For the Miller bots, we aren't really sure right now. We kind of want everyone to learn. What we want to get out of Minnetrials is better design choices and process. So we kind of want everyone to be involved, but we might limit the returning members a little bit because they do have prior knowledge. But yeah.
For 3920.
Go ahead, Eve.
For 3926, at least last year and probably this year, we ran it with our full team involved, but an emphasis on making or letting new people get more experience with it. So, for example, our new coders were entirely responsible for coding the robot. And hopefully we transfer that into the CAD and build subteams this year. Last year we didn't have any new build people. We a lot of it was on returning members and some people who are experimenting in joining build. This year we should have a few more, so that should be a good learning experience for them.
Yeah, we have 20 new members this year and 10 returning members. So realistically about 10 per team. And then returning members are guiding. So it sounds like the team sizes are about the same around the table for the most part. So.
And I do want to mention one thing from the conversation earlier about strategy, which I thought was interesting. And I guess this kind of goes with team size and returning students and versus new students. But one of the big emphases for Nomothic this year was getting, especially new students, hands-on with the work, because that was one of our issues that we faced before Minnetrials. Was that during that fall was a time when a lot of people would sort of leave the team because it's not really robotics, like you aren't building a robot. And so Minnetrials has really helped with that. And so our big emphasis this year was just getting a sort of basic strategy done, but then saying, here are our tools, let's build stuff. And I thought that was really interesting to hear the sort of two sides from the conversation earlier.
Yeah, I mean that's the same goal for us, right? Is get people into what they thought they joined for to start with, and then go from there, right? And try and give them spots where they don't know what to do, but the problem is clear, right? Like, oh, I need to figure out how to attach these two pieces together. I don't know what my options are, right? And then that gives it gives very clear of there's an urgency or a need to learn something, and then two, it gives the mentors a much easier way to explain things, right? Because there's a clear defined what is the question being asked or problem that needs to be taught, or the skill that needs to be taught, right? And so we find it's actually easier for mentors when there's a specific need right in front of them to teach that. And it means that not everyone has the same knowledge, because not everyone ran into that same problem of how do I attach these two pieces together. But the students also then teach each other as you go through build season. But it seems to be a easier time for the mentors to teach when there's a specific need, and more enjoyable because there's a specific need, and you're not just teaching something for the purposes of teaching it, but you're teaching it for a specific need. And so I think that's the biggest benefit that we've gotten out of Minnetrials, and why we're enjoying the mentors who are running this from No Mythic and Hopkins and a few other teams are enjoying putting this all together for teams.
This seems like a very appropriate time for me to say thank you very much for doing Minnetrials, because it has been hugely beneficial to our team. Our students raved about how great it was last year and insisted that we do it again. They felt it was tremendously helpful for the new students. And so please pass along our thanks to everyone, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. We are in need of a person who wants to do reveal videos for next year. So if anyone knows someone, that is not a skill set that any of us have, or the time to do it. So if you're that's the big ask, I think, that we're missing. Everyone goes, well, where's the reveal video? I go, there's just a rule manual. You have to go read it. So if you got someone, an alum, a mentor, right, who's interested in that, put them in touch with me, please. Hopefully we can add that. So
we do have a mentor on our team who's a Unity developer. Maybe I could convince him to help out. I don't know. He's a part-time mentor for us, but Unity would be, I would think, would be one of the perfect skill sets. But we'll see. I'll mention it to him.
all right.
Jason, how are you doing on your volunteer lineup?
We're doing all right. We're going to draft all of the students to do field reset and queuing and some amount of those jobs. Let's see. Our head referee had her baby, so I think she'll be back in commission by December. And then we need to finish up our scoring system. We had a rough September here, where everyone in our game design committee either had a baby, got married, or bought a house, or was in college. So we struggled a little bit to get all the rules out on time, but we did. So I think we're doing okay. A bunch of people have already filled out the form and said that they can volunteer. There'll be some amount of day of assessment of where we need people to be. It's a much lower volunteer need than most FRC events. We will need some assistance with setup Friday night and tear down Saturday night. And those are probably the big ones. So any teams that can leave a few people behind or stay a little bit later to help with tear down Saturday night, that would be much appreciated.
And do you have a preference whether we load in on Friday night or Saturday morning?
Last year, everyone loaded on Saturday morning except for No Mythic and Hopkins, who were doing setup on Friday night. I'm leaving it open either way, just to make it easier for teams. I know, depending on what their loading situation for their stuff is. Just note that if you come Friday night, your pit spot might not be ready yet, so you might not be able to set up your pit Friday night. You may just have to stick your stuff in a corner
Sure.
until we get the field rolled out and whatnot. So yeah, otherwise we don't have a particular preference. Other questions, comments, concerns, whether about the rules or other general?
Yeah, I have a question, Jason. I apologize if I missed this. In the rotating of the drive team members to the different jobs, what if the drive coach is an adult, or did I miss something, or adults aren't going to be on the drive teams?
No, that's okay, Mark. So we have 2 drive coach roles specifically, so you can leave an adult or an experienced student to kind of guide the drive team, right? Of how do you get the robot on the field? How do you set up the driver's station? How do you whatnot? So yeah, you're welcome to have one consistent drive coach, right? This is an honor system, enforced by yourself about, right? So the intention is get everyone some exposure to be on the drive team. It doesn't have to be in a specific role or whatnot.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect the adult drive coach to take a turn driving the robot. That's not going to happen. Right. Yeah. Okay. Just clarify.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So the intention is just that your entire team goes through and takes some role on the drive team, right? For a match, whether it be driver, operator, human player, drive coach, right? And get everyone a little bit of exposure so they understand what that's like. And maybe get some interest and also some empathy for your drive team and the pressure that they're under at competition.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Cool. Well, if you think of more questions or comments or concerns, right, you can email minnetrials@hopkinsrobotics.org. And we'll get back to you. Otherwise, as we get a little closer, we'll send out some more logistical details. Time and place is already set, and same as last year. There's plenty of seating. There's going to be some concessions again. There's space for lunch in the cafeteria. There's plenty of parking. So we're excited to run this again. Hopefully no snow at that point, just to make load in and load out a little easier.
Jason, another follow-up. On the Friday night setup, do you have that timing already defined?
What did I put on the calendar? If you go to the...
It's there.
Yeah, it's okay. There, I think. Yeah. So I said 6:30. So we get in at 6:30 to 8. Right. We'll probably be there 5 to 9 to get all set up. I think we were there 5 to 10 last time, but yeah. We got to move carpet from the high school over to the elementary school and all of our game pieces and whatnot. So it's a little bit of a trek for us. So.
Do many hands make light work, or do they make it more of a cluster, in your opinion?
They do make light work. Give me a heads up if you think some people are coming. I know a lot of people this far out are like, yeah, we think we can send some people, right? And so, it's hard to know until you get close on whether everyone's sending one person or everyone's sending 12. And then, we have a whole gym filled with people. So, Yeah. Tear down Saturday is probably the bigger one, right? It'll be easy for me to get lots of Hopkins people Friday night, but after a long day of Saturday, it'll be a little harder. Although tear down was pretty fast last time. I think we were done by like 8 p.m. So
You don't really have to try to salvage much, right?
we keep the field border, and the carpet is the carpet that Hopkins uses for practice. But yeah, otherwise it's not too bad. I mean, we've got a TV, some tables to break down, put the bleachers back, sweep, move some tables and whatnot. So yeah. Other questions? One reminder, I didn't want to buy a large number of any more wiffle balls than I had to. So everyone needs to bring theirs that they got to competition to make sure we have enough. So
Do you want us to paint any?
No, we have a paint booth at Hopkins in the shop. So or a paint room. So we'll hang them and spray paint them, and it'll be super fast for us to do. So we'll paint all of them. Just bring the ones you have. It'll be great. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're getting to the end of the night. If there aren't any more questions, last call for questions for Jason. I want to remind everyone that just like tonight and the last few nights, you too can host a topic on the Sunday night call. I just looked at the schedule, and you guys have done an amazing job of filling out our schedule. Next week, we're going to be talking about electrical. The week after that, scouting. The week after that, core values. Then we have an open spot. So November 19th is still available if anyone wants to do a session. And then on December 3rd, control theory and PID tuning. So really good lineup of talks that are coming up. There's looks like there's probably 4 spots between now and the end of the year. Maybe 3 spots. 3 spots between now and the end of the year. And then we'll be having topics after that in January. I suppose we'll probably do a kickoff talk and design talk for when the new game's revealed. But at that point, we'll probably get back into our regularly scheduled programming of let anyone sign up for a spot. So please feel free. Encourage your friends and your mentors if they want to give a talk. We'd love to have them on. And I say this every time, but if you would like to be a Dean's List candidate someday, this is a great thing to talk about in a Dean's List interview, having hosted a talk or given a presentation. So please pass that along to your Dean's List potential students as well. All right. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, I will see everyone next week. Thank you, Jason.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Have
Looking forward to seeing you. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.